This is the Solomon Project, where it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep that counts. I'm your host, Richard Burns. Today is marked on the calendar as a special day. I'm of the belief that every day should be Memorial Day. Memorial Day started off with our community, soldiers from our community, and it spread out. Now the entire country acknowledges and celebrates Memorial Day. Thank you to all who served in our armed forces, to, even if it's not to, you wound up having to protect us from enemies, both foreign and domestic, and swearing an oath to defend the Constitution, which unfortunately some people don't respect. Some people don't respect the oath. They don't respect the Constitution. It's a sad state of affairs. It's even worse when somebody volunteers. Worse yet, when someone has to serve an obligatory service through in our armed forces, getting drafted. It's even worse when you get drafted and you have to take that oath and serve alongside with people who don't respect the oath, don't respect the Constitution. That's even worse, in my opinion. Some people volunteer for other reasons, but it doesn't matter if you it doesn't matter what reason you have for voluntary service, for volunteering to be a part of the armed forces. It doesn't matter, because when there's a conflict and they need you to go out and sacrifice your life, sacrifice your body, that's a huge deal. Huge deal. This is why I'm of the belief that Memorial Day should be every day. Memorizing events that have occurred with family, with friends, circumstances that can lead to the end of your existence, can lead to mutilation, amputation. Putting yourself, because I never served. There was one moment where I was going to volunteer to serve, and that was during the Gulf War. And that was because my older brother was out in the Gulf War. And thinking about that, I think about my circumstances, and as a result of thinking about my nephews, my cousins, my brother, grandparents, things like that have served, not just served, but were actually in combat, on the front line. What circumstances could I be living through right now that I could possibly complain about? I can't think of a reason to complain about my circumstances. I can't think of anything that's going on in my life that would compare to what my god brother went through while he was in Lebanon, and a school bus full of explosives took his legs. What could I possibly be going through that would justify complaining? What could I possibly justify what soldiers went through during the Civil War? What are my circumstances? What do I have to complain about? Walking around our community, the people from our community, for a long time, they didn't even have shoes. They were walking around barefoot. And how many men wound up being amputees during the Civil War? What was life for a person during the Civil War like after they lost a limb, an arm, a leg, maybe both? What was life like for them? What was it like on the battlefield? What was it like anticipating that this could be it? What was it like for my cousin in Vietnam? In sweltering heat, super high humidity, starving, exhausted to the point where he can collapse at any moment. And then he gets orders to grab his gear, probably weighed anywhere between 50 and 70 pounds. Hungry, exhausted. You got all kinds of insects, poisonous snakes. He had to endure that for at least a year. I don't remember how many times he served. How does that compare with my circumstances? My refrigerator's full. I'm talking about my home. My children have never experienced hunger. So what exactly do I have to complain about when I consider this day, Memorial Day? When I remember every day? When I remember my cousin who, while looking through binoculars, he's a soldier. I don't know if he's still alive, but he's a soldier at the time, and he's looking at the enemy through binoculars and gets shot in the eye. What exactly do I have to complain about? Or one of my nephews who was deployed to a war something like 8 times. I lost count. What do I... If you've never experienced war, then you're pretty much clueless. I mean, look at the Gulf War, for example. You have any idea how hot it gets during the day and how cold it gets at night in the desert? My brother was transferred 3 hours prior to a Scud missile hitting the base he was in, where he lost, I think, something like 50 of his friends. He lost. 3 hours. I was working on, I think it was 22nd Street between 6th and 5th Avenue. I was working as a printer's assistant. A printer's assistant, sorry. And there was a gentleman, and I was talking to him outside, right on the sidewalk. We're talking, and a truck drives by, and the exhaust backfires. It makes a loud bang. This guy dropped to the floor and wedged himself underneath a parked car, trembling with fear. That's when I discovered he was a Vietnam vet, and later on found out that he was captured and tortured. What's going on in my life? If I'm to remember, if I'm to memorialize things that have happened to people that I've known, family members that back home are dirt poor, can't afford shoes. The one thing that saved them was the fact that they were able to eat off the land. Other than that, they had nothing. Do I forget? I think that would be a form of disrespect if I did that. Just like Memorial Day, to remember all these people that participated voluntarily and involuntarily. You're talking to somebody 1 minute, and then you keep talking and there's no answer back. And then you look over, expired from a wound. And it's either freezing or it's hot. Look at World War I and World War II. Soldiers were losing limbs from frostbite, starving. So Memorial Day for me is not one day. Memorial Day for me is every day. And because it's every day, I think about whether or not I should open my mouth and complain about my circumstances. I saw all 6 of my children being born, all 6, whether they were natural birth or cesarean. I was present and I watched the whole thing. I saw the pain that their mother was going through. I thought about my mother who gave birth to 14. And it didn't stop there. I started thinking about all mothers. I would have to put them in there on Memorial Day and every day. I know I look like I'm about to give birth, but it's not going to happen. But thinking about the women in my life that did give birth, the pain that they went through, and the fear as well, because there's no talk about the fear. I saw fear in my wife's face. She expressed her fear at a trip to the doctor. we're at an appointment, and she's 20 something weeks along, and the doctor, the nurse comes in and says, wait, I have to send these results to the doctor. Doctor comes in, and she just starts talking about how she's prepping the operating room for a cesarean. My wife was losing it. They explained what her situation was, and we were trying to convince, because the baby was only 20 some odd weeks old. When she was born 1 pound, premature. And yeah, the doctor said that, well, the doctor apologized and said, no, we can't. So I'm not sure where I got cut off. Camera overheated. Going back to the hospital, and the doctor was saying that we can't let you go. It's urgent that we perform this cesarean. If we don't, both your wife and your daughter can die. My wife was an absolute mess. She was suggesting that I allow her to perish for the sake of our daughter. I said, no way I'm doing that. So the fear, the pain, seeing our daughter 1 pound with all kinds of tiny tubes and straps and all kinds of stuff hooked up, the pain of the surgery, the pain in her face looking at our daughter, so frail. She was looking so frail. Now she's a hot mess. She's 2 years old and she's a hot mess. She's all over the place, climbing, arguing. But it's that moment, that fear. Women go through that all the time. So in my opinion, for me to complain about my circumstances, knowing what these people who served went through, the fear they went through, the losses they suffered, the losses their family members suffered, to not consider those things, to not remember those things, to not memorialize those events, to not memorialize Black Wall Street, Jim Crow, to not memorialize these things. Your family members that served, that didn't make it back. And now you can come on and, you have certain protections under the law granted to us by way of the Constitution, that these people fought, risked their lives, lost limbs if I study my circumstances and choose to complain about my circumstances, I would say that I was disrespecting all those people. Disrespecting my mother, my cousins, everybody, all the women in my family, all the ones that served. I would think that I was disrespecting all of them. I don't have I don't have anything to complain about. I am human and on occasion it slips, but I check myself. I hit the memorial button. Well, I'm going to kick it over to Kitty. Kitty don't ever complain. And you see where Kitty drives through. The straight up hood. Kitty don't complain. So stay fresh. Keep it profitable. And happy Memorial Day.
Arabam Dacia, seviyorum çift kalem maça. Göremedi kimseden fayda, işler